Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Wellbeing Show. I've got a colleague who's come back. I mean, sometimes they do. They come back for rain too. Paula's come back to us after 10 years, I think. Last time we saw each other on this show was prior to the pandemic. So there's a lot to catch up with. Just to sort of remind you all that although this looks live, it's actually pre-recorded. So I'm going to give you my contact number. Please don't call if you're watching it. Do send me messages on WhatsApp. Otherwise, you might get a grumpy Noel as opposed to a pleasant Noel because I'll probably be doing something else. So the number's 07506 319 745. WhatsApp me with any questions or queries and any comments, really. If you're watching this on social media, etc., do comment, like, share. All of that stuff would be super helpful. I'm sure Paula will talk about contact details for her at some point in the chat as well. That's enough from me. So, hi Paula, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm a bit hot. We're in the middle of a heat wave in the UK. That some of you already know that. It's
Yeah.
a bit uncomfortable, but yeah,
You're
there
on
you
the
go.
coast now, aren't you, in Dorset?
I am on the coast, yeah. So in theory, a little bit of a breeze, but I'm not exactly straight on the coast. I'm a good sort of 10, 15 miles in, so it's has to be a heck of a breeze, frankly, to
Right.
hit where I am.
Something tells
Yeah.
me you're not a Dorset native, are you? Or are you?
I'm not a Dorset native, but I'm a Sussex native. I was
Right.
brought up just a bit inland from Brighton. So, yeah, I was
Okay.
brought up by the sea. So, very happy to get back home in some ways. But
Okay.
yeah, I was in the Midlands for many, many years.
It's the Midlands twang I can detect.
Oh, and well, I'm married to a Brummie.
Are you?
So, and he's a proper Brummie, singing and all that
Well,
kind of
I'm
stuff.
a Brummie
So,
as well. I managed to get rid of mine a long time
ah,
ago. Theatre, don't you know, darling? Bit of theatre,
oh,
get rid of
okay.
it. So
Right.
I did theatre in the days before regional accents were acceptable. So I
Were
had to get rid of
fashionable.
them. It was long
Yeah.
before Peaky Blinders, which I still haven't
Yeah.
watched. I must start watching. So welcome back, and we've had lots of massive world-shaking events in between. I'm sure we'll discuss it with you.
Yeah.
So you grew up in and around Brighton.
Yep, that's
Um,
right.
Tell us about that. What was that like, sort of family and all that?
What was family like? It was okay. I wouldn't say that I had a particularly happy childhood. I was adopted,
Yeah,
and I was quite old when I was adopted. So discovering all about attachment issues was a bit scary for me. Thinking,
yeah.
gosh, I really ought to be considerably more screwed up than I am. But or well, maybe I am. Who knows? But yeah, it was okay. I had an older brother, 6 years older than me. Still have an older brother, 6 years older than me, adopted. And yeah, fairly kind of normal stuff. I left school at 16, so I was a bit of a teenage rebel. So there's no way I was kind of going to carry on and get an education. So totally bizarre. I've got a doctorate now because
I was
I
going
didn't
to
even get
say
many.
that's a
I know I
turn
didn't
up
even
for the
get any O
books.
levels, let alone anything else. Never went to university and somehow managed to pull that one out of the bag. There you go.
Do you mind
Yeah.
saying anything about why the adoption happened? I mean, you don't have to, obviously, but
Um, yeah, so I did because I was that bit older. I did find out about my birth family and was able to have quite a lot of records that were around. Mum had very severe mental health problems, so I was number four, child number four. I was the youngest,
right.
and she had severe mental health problems and just couldn't cope with another baby. But I was in and out of foster care for a while until they decided that yeah, I ought to just get put up for adoption. So unlike most adoptees, I had a mum and a dad that were married, and I had full siblings.
Okay.
So a relatively kind of unusual situation, hence not being put straight up for adoption.
And did you all get adopted together, or you and the siblings, or did they keep
No,
different?
no. One other, the eldest was foster care, I think, for most of his life. My brother and sister, who I actually met fairly recently, they stayed together, but they were brought up primarily by dad rather than mum. So mum and dad got divorced
Okay.
after I went into care. So yeah,
Okay.
and I met them fairly recently, which was
So
quite exciting.
it's quite a challenging early start to life. Mm.
Yes, you could spend the whole episode just on that.
But
But
it's
I
also,
think,
it is interesting, isn't it? You have this challenging start, and here you are sort of helping people who've also had challenging starts and challenging
well, and
lives.
I think also there's and other people that are adopted may really resonate with this. I think because I've never kind of quite fitted in, so
Yeah.
because I knew I was adopted because I was four, um, so it was I always knew I was different. So I've always had a heart for people that were different, people that felt they didn't fit
Sure.
in, people that were struggling in different kind of ways. So I think that's always that what lent me to that. I think the other thing that I was really influential in the career that I chose. I was brought up quite out in the sticks,
Okay.
much older brother, so my eldest sibling, much older, surrounded by boys, surrounded by lads. So I was kind of one of the lads from really quite a young age. And I think pretty much all of my career, I've worked with men, and now I work in the therapeutic field, which is predominantly male clients. But I think I've always been very comfortable in that environment because actually they were my formative years.
Interesting. I mean, I sort of had it the other way around in terms of gender. So older sis
Right.
older sisters who were horrific, I have to say. I love them to bits, but I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest. Um, but do you draw a link between having had challenges in early life and then choices later in life to engage in some sort of therapy or healing profession?
Yeah, so I mean, my first career, well, I went into advertising. So I worked in an ad agency in Brighton, and then I went into marketing. Had my family relatively young, so I've got two daughters and 2.5 grandchildren. And as in the other one, the half one's not quite arrived yet. I realise that could sound rather odd. Um, and yeah, I started training to be a therapist actually when I was 28, so
Right.
sort of fairly young. A lot of people get into
Yeah,
training to
that
be a
is quite
therapy
young. I
later in
mean,
life.
yeah. You
Yeah,
just got
yeah,
under the age bar at that age, I think, to be honest.
yeah. I think I was one of the youngest people ever to
Yeah.
train with. So I started in drugs and alcohol first, um, just because there was a volunteering opportunity, and then trained with Relate, which way back then, so you're going back, what, nearly 35
Yeah.
years, 33 years, was considered some of the best training available at the time, particularly bearing in mind I'd left school at 16, so I don't have
Yeah.
any other qualifications. Yeah, and I think I mean, interesting. I think the other reason I went into therapy, partly, undoubtedly, an unconscious level to fix myself. That's the kind of cliche, isn't it? Went into it to kind of fix myself. But I think the other reason was because I've got come from a marketing background. I've been doing marketing for sort of 10 years. A lot of it appealed to me that was actually quite like marketing.
Yeah.
In
No, I
marketing,
get
the
that. I think that's
motivation,
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
motivation is trying to get people to buy things, whereas obviously with therapy, the motivation is trying to help people to change. But actually, it's still a quite a similar kind of
I've
process.
always thought a lot of therapy is about sales, really,
Yes,
because and you're selling
yeah,
something to people that they want, but it's also I'm not quite sure it fits me and all that sort of stuff. So
absolutely.
that set of
Yeah,
skills, I think, is yeah, it's really
yeah,
it is about that. I mean, the idea of the wounded healer is a bit tedious, but it's also quite often true, isn't it? I think,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
quite a. I
Great
mean,
to be a cliche. Yeah,
without a doubt, I sort of trained because I needed the help myself. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And
yeah,
that's, I guess,
yeah,
partly why a lot of the training insists that trainees have their own personal work going on at the same time,
yeah, yeah,
so that you have
absolutely.
the opportunity to experience personal growth, but also the opportunity to go, maybe I'm in this for the wrong reason. Sort of like
Yeah, yeah,
but it's the way it is. I mean, it's very different, say, to training in clinical psychology, where maybe that isn't the focus because the focus is on sort of research and models of practice. And same with psychiatry, where again the
mm,
personal growth isn't so important.
yeah,
But there's this strange group of therapies, psychological therapies, and practitioners who do look at the issues of change. My experience of my own personal therapy is that it gives me an awful lot of empathy for people who struggle with changing because it
Yes.
wasn't easy to deal with.
Yeah.
And you alluded, slightly jokingly, you alluded to it when you started looking at issues like attachment, and you went, "Whoa." I guess you had that. I mean, a lot of the books I read in the early days, I was like, "Oh my, is this me? Is this the book? I don't know." I'm sort of. It was quite
Yeah.
odd and strange that I found myself written in these books, but was something similar for you, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I hadn't, there were various aspects that I had no idea
Yeah.
about that. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example. So I remember going on this is really quite early on in my career, being sent on kind of a CPD day, which was really about awareness of childhood abuse, being able to work with people and
Yeah.
being able to recognize it. So it's more a safeguarding kind of day thing. And they were talking about some of the symptoms that children or adults experienced if they had been victims of childhood abuse. And I remember listening to this checklist and
Let's
thinking,
go. Tick, tick.
I thought everybody
That's
does that, and
right.
almost wanting
That's
to say,
right.
doesn't everyone? And they go, no. And it was after
No,
that
how
that I
interesting.
actually decided to get hold of my birth records and
Right.
found out that I'd been
Okay.
quite badly abused
Yeah.
at various points as well physically. But so much of it, I just thought, and I guess that is the case in so many things. We think we're normal, or we think that everybody is like this
Yeah.
until you learn more about it.
That
Um,
normalization thing is a really interesting dynamic, which I think we can go into a bit more. But coming to this idea of abuse versus ACEs or the continuation, so
yeah,
adverse childhood experiences, I think, are a much more interesting and broader set of understandings. And there's the thing about abuse is like seen as quite extreme and maybe difficult for people to get their heads around. I don't know what your thinking is around those definitions and terms.
yeah, absolutely. And going back to the fact that I work almost predominantly with, almost exclusively with men, I think men often have quite a hard time connecting with the idea that they might have experienced abuse precisely because it is heard as such a terrible thing. Obviously, it is a terrible thing, but you
Yeah.
know what I mean. It's as if it's one extreme. And I think it's very much about that developmental model that actually I
Yeah.
think as humans we can go through all sorts of horrendous crises and build resilience and be okay. But when there's a catalogue of different things that keep happening,
Yeah.
and I think we often don't fully acknowledge the impact of uh, parental neglect, parental
Oh, definitely. I think
indifference,
so. Yeah, absolutely.
but also another one that we see really quite a lot is guys who were brought up in a home where another sibling got all of the attention because they were poorly, because they were unwell. So through no, and I think often people get quite defensive of their parents, don't they? I don't blame mum and dad, and I can't excuse my behaviour just because this, that, and the other. Because yeah, it all sounds like blame rather than a kind of an explanation. But often, so many families have very, very difficult circumstances where they're living in poverty, where they're living with discrimination of some kind, whether there's ill health
Yeah.
between mum and dad or another sibling, and all of this can leave a child not getting the affection, the attention that they need. But it's because life was tough,
Yeah.
not because it was a failing of parents, but life was tough.
Yeah.
And helping clients to really acknowledge that had an impact, and it's okay to have compassion with that piece of yourself that was hurt by that without then blaming
That's right.
a
And
parent.
and I think that's important. And it's a fairly common thing that you understand. Like I worked in social services a lot. I managed teams and we did a lot of the child protection, as it was called now, safeguarding now stuff.
Yeah,
And working with kids in that environment, it is really important to handle their relationship to their parents very sensitively. Uh,
yeah, yeah,
because often, and it is often the case, it is often the case, it's a failure rather than a design. So it's not
Yes.
designed to
Yeah.
hurt, it's failed.
Yeah.
Something has
Yeah.
failed environmentally, and the parents
Yeah.
can't cope,
And
they don't have the resources, etc., etc.
yeah. Yeah. And systemically as well, that there'll be so many other pressures on the family as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of sense of environmental impingement is maybe a more useful way of thinking about it because it's less
Yes.
finger pointing, and more.
Yeah.
I think it makes it more understandable in some ways. You talked about developmental issues, so do you mind expanding? Because I think it's going to be a large part of what you do, expanding on this notion of developmental trauma and how that shapes personality and what that might be,
Yeah.
and sort of give us some idea of that because it's often like that's where we get these often strange terms like personality disorders, and there's a shading there. Some people have got identifiable biological problems probably, but a lot of people
Yeah.
it isn't like that. You're nodding away, so
Yeah.
you're aware of the field.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm first plug, although it's premature. I'm
No,
actually
go.
writing the third edition of my book at the moment. So I think probably the first time we met, actually, Noel, was probably not long after the first edition of the book
Yeah,
came out. So then it was, and we go into the name territory there here as well. So the first edition of the book was called Understanding and Treating Sex Addiction,
yeah,
because that's what it was, sex addiction. Nobody really had porn addiction back then because it was before the age of a smartphone. The second edition was understanding and treating sex and pornography addiction,
yeah,
because pornography had then become a major issue. This edition is actually called Sex is Not the Problem. We can pick up on that in a bit,
yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah, good choice. I
But
think that's
it's,
great. Yeah.
yeah, understanding and treating CSBD and porn addiction. I'm still putting porn addiction in because that's what
Well, I
people
mean, I
know
can
about
understand
it.
why you would say that. So CSPD, tell us what those words letters
Right.
mean.
I will get back to the question. So CSBD, compulsive sexual behavior disorder.
Yeah,
So sex addiction, porn addiction technically don't exist. World Health Organization accepted into ICD-11, so the International Classification and Diagnostic Manual in 2019, CSBD, compulsive sexual behavior disorder, and they put it under impulse control disorders, along with kleptomania and pyromania and intermittent explosive disorder. So the people that say we can't put it under addiction because it's pathologizing, I think you haven't looked at what it's
I know.
with anyway.
Surely it should be
But
more in the OCD type compulsive disorders.
well, so WHO,
Sorry,
World
we're
Health
going off.
Organization,
Let's go back. Let's go back.
will get
So
yeah, they
developmental
did.
trauma and adaptations of
All right, we'll
personality
go back to
disorder.
that. So, writing the current book, what I've done is look at four kind of cornerstones of what causes the issue. And I think this all fits in with the developmental bit.
Yeah,
Some of it is neurobiology.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
we know that
yeah,
our brain is shaped by our childhood experiences, by attachment issues, by
yeah,
trauma issues,
yeah,
but also within that neurobiology piece is, I think, a lot of what we're beginning to learn and understand around neurodivergence. And we are seeing so many clients coming forward, particularly with ADHD. And we know that there's some neurobiological differences there. So there's the neurobiological piece. Another piece is around emotional regulation.
sure.
And going back to the developmental piece, the how we learn to manage our emotions is so often down to what we saw our parents do and
Yeah,
what we didn't see them do.
yeah,
And we learn how to manage our emotions from what's seen, from what's shown, and from what we're told.
yeah,
And then there's the kind of cognitive flexibility bit. So that's another of the cornerstones. How we think about our thinking. And again, I think so much of that comes from childhood
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
And one of the things that we see a lot in sex and porn addiction, or CSBD, is shame. And I think so much of shame is around how we think about our thinking. We think we are somebody bad, someone defective, someone whatever. And again, often those are due to messages picked up from childhood. And then the final cornerstone, because there had to be four, because otherwise the building would fall down,
yeah.
apparently. The final cornerstone is identity,
Okay.
how we identify ourselves. And I don't just mean in terms of gender and orientation, though that's going to be part of it, but in terms of our core sense of our values, our sense of how we define ourselves, how we define what's important about ourselves. And I think our childhood development and what happens to us feeds into each of those. So I think you're absolutely right. Just talking about developmental trauma, as some do, I think ultimately, as clinicians, it's the consequences that we're working with. We sometimes get those clients, and you must have had them as well, who want to fix their
Yes,
past,
yes, yes.
who somehow think we might have a time machine and we can go
Right.
back and we can actually fix that issue. And we can't. All we can do is look at what impact that's had and change how you think about it, how you feel about it,
I mean,
what
I
that
remember a guy
means about
once,
your
it's a long time
identity.
ago. I remember a guy once, it's a long time ago, and he'd been in the miners' strike up in Scotland and stuff like that. And he'd been put on some Valium type medication for a long time. And then the
Mm.
doctor decided, oh, you're addicted. I'm just going to stop it. It's like,
Oh, gosh.
just,
Right.
okay,
Thank you. Yeah.
great. And then he spiraled off into using substances and self-medication and stuff like that. And I was talking to him and he said, I'd like to get to the root cause of what happened. And I said, okay, well, you got there. What would you do with it? And he said, I'd rip it out and throw it away. And I'm like, what would be left? Do you know what I mean? What would
Yes.
be left of you? What could you build upon? How could you hate
Yeah.
yourself in that way? And it's that thing now we understand we grow away from, we develop away from.
Yeah.
It's that growth and development. And you talked about the neuroscience aspect, and we now know the mind remains or the brain remains plastic. Not
Yes.
just plastic,
Yes.
but there's also neurogenesis happening, the
Yes.
production of new brain
Absolutely.
cells throughout life. So this is where
Yeah.
we are now. Um, in terms of the neurodiversity, you're talking more about ADHD, I guess, not so much about autism, or are you talking about both? I mean, they're both combining now anyway in diagnosis, aren't they?
Yeah. 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 So I do talk a bit in the new book about autism. To be honest, I don't talk much about it for two reasons. One, I certainly ain't an expert.
Yeah,
So that's one very good reason not to. But the other is that there's been very, very little research. So we know that there are some links between sexual offending and autism, or rather, the often people with autism are overly represented within that. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's CSBD or porn addiction anyway,
yeah.
and they haven't made that distinction. So I don't want to,
Oh,
correlate
okay.
something that's not there. But there is a lot of evidence already, a lot of research on ADHD and addiction generally,
Yeah.
and increasingly ADHD and CSBD, porn addiction particularly. So
Okay.
there is the research on that. So, writing a bit more eloquently about those links, I think, is possible because it's research based, but we
Okay.
don't yet really know about the autism
And
links.
I just want to put a context here as well. Paula might get embarrassed by this, but people should know that Paula is a leading practitioner in this field and has transformed the work, certainly in the UK. And I think you're having more of an impact on the US now. So old models
Mm.
of this work were not very effective. And were rooted in an addiction terminology which is inappropriate and doesn't work,
Yeah,
and people were sent off to 12-step programs which don't work, and there was no real sort of definition of what was going on. And up to date, Paula has pioneered an amazing treatment program, which she started as an individual. I remember Paula jobbing as a therapist and trainer, and is now,
yeah.
quite rightly internationally renowned for her work. So it's really important to understand that, particularly in this field. And I just want to talk about this a little bit, if you don't mind, because in this particular cohort of patients, which are mostly male, as you say, we can talk about
Yeah.
if women are underrepresented or not, but there's very little sympathy, sort of like. So,
I mean, generally with people with addiction, I just want to pick up on a couple of things actually from what you said there,
yeah,
Noel. I mean, one is you said about neurogenesis a bit earlier.
yeah,
So one of the reasons that people feel so strongly against the label of addiction, and why people with addiction often do not get much compassion, is because of this notion of once an addict, always an addict. You're stuck with it.
Yeah,
That's what you're like.
yes,
That was before we knew about neurogenesis. So actually,
absolutely,
that's not
absolutely.
true.
No.
Things can change. So that no, the whole model around
So let's
addiction
just stop
has
for a
changed.
second. We're not suggesting people start using again. Those experiences,
No,
it's like
absolutely not.
any
Absolutely not.
addict
That's not the way to
listening,
find
that's
out.
not what we're suggesting. But you're not
No,
doomed,
no.
is what we're suggesting. You're not doomed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think also the other thing I'd say is just to be clear, 12, and you know this anyway, 12 step is a support mechanism. It's great. It's not a treatment approach. If you use it purely as a treatment approach, you may not find it terribly effective. It is for some, clearly it is for some people, you know what? They get over it without anything at all,
Well,
any intervention
the
whatsoever.
program was written
But
by a guy who almost certainly was a sex addict, right? If you know anything about his own
well,
personal.
some would say that sex addiction is at the root, is the primary addiction of mankind. But
Yeah. Well,
that's a lot.
let's move on. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we're having
What
very
was the
interesting
question?
conversation. The question was,
I forgot the
there isn't much
question.
sympathy for this cohort of
Yeah.
patients,
Yeah.
and the field has been evolving. So maybe you could just give us a potted history of this field, if you like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then how it's changed and what the understanding right now is.
Okay, yeah. So I guess it all. Oh, gosh, we could go back to Augustus, but that's probably a little bit too far. Patrick Carnes in the 80s. He was a prison psychiatrist. He was the guy that popularized the term sex addiction. So this was over in the US, fairly kind of religious sort of community over there. This term sex addiction, famously, Michael Douglas, he was one of the first kind of
Oh yeah, that's
famous
I
people.
remember
I
that.
remember
Yeah.
Michael
Yes,
Douglas was a
absolutely.
sex addict. Now, in those days, so we're talking pre-internet, sex addicts were basically fairly wealthy, successful men who were sleeping with a lot of sex workers or having lots of affairs.
Yeah.
That was your average profile. Um, there were some who said, really, is this really an addiction or is this just an excuse for privileged men to act this way? I mean, much more contemporary example of that, which didn't help our understanding or compassion at all, was, oh, he's in prison now.
Weinstein. No.
Yes, well
But
done. Yeah, yeah.
he was a predator. That's not anything
But
like what we're talking about. I
he
know.
claimed
He
it
actually
was
got
sex
admitted,
addiction.
didn't he, to a treatment program for like
Absolutely.
why on earth would you let something like that into your program? It was just so
So
bizarre.
yeah, that has not helped compassion and understanding.
No.
Since we've had the internet, since we've had broadband, since we've had smartphones, pornography has become the biggest issue. So
Sure.
pornography, problematic pornography use, as it's sometimes referred to, makes up about 80% of presentations of people with CSBD.
Okay.
80%. So, and in many respects, it's a bit like, and this isn't popular with some people, it's a bit like a gateway drug. So it starts with pornography, and you've got the infinite scrolling, you've potentially got your addictive by design, all those algorithms drawing you in that we're beginning to recognize with gaming and gambling and social media and shopping, all of that addictive by design stuff. And for some people, the pornography becomes more extreme, more novel. The brain's looking for novelty all the time,
Yeah.
which can lead some people to cross the line into offending.
Yeah.
And that's when they reach out for help. It's probably only about 10% of the work we do at the Laurel Centre is offenders,
Yeah.
but with the growing prevalence of offending, it is thought that a huge percentage of offenders are struggling with pornography addiction, and
And
that
that would
might be
be
what led
offending in
them to
terms of
cross the
type of
line.
images and type of pornography.
Well, yes, but also other types of cyber offending that's
Okay.
happening now, chatting to minors online and whatever. So for some people, it can escalate into offending. For others, it goes off or it goes into the chat. It goes into the webcams. It goes onto the OnlyFans. It starts costing money. They
Yeah.
start going onto the adult apps. They then meet somebody. It's gone from purely online to meeting strangers for
And
sex, and
that's
that
your
might be
experience.
when they
It
get
would
help.
then move in that direction for most people who you're seeing. Right.
It's often the point at which they reach out for help
Right.
is that I think, but I mean, increasingly what we're seeing is quite a difference in profile of the people coming forward for help, and I think this is really interesting. For some, those that are kind of over the age of 45, they maybe always had some issues with pornography, but it was when they got the internet that it exploded. Often those are the clients who are
Sure.
married or in,
Yeah.
faithful relationships, and it's broken a fidelity bond. But we are seeing an increasing number of people, and this is at Laurel Centre, but also on Pivotal Recovery, which is very, very low cost, seeking help in their late teens, early 20s.
Sure.
And I think that's really interesting. And I think that's partly because younger people are more open to seeking support and help for mental health issues.
Sure.
We are talking about male mental health issues. Wonderful organisations like Movember that I've been doing some work with, really getting sort of men and boys' mental health onto the government agenda, which is also something that's happening increasingly. So they're actually coming out for help much, much more at a younger age, and I think it's partly because they're more open to seeking help, but also they've been brought up with this internet porn thing. They don't have to be told, is it really addictive? Is it not? Is it just an excuse? They know how addictive this stuff is because they've
Yeah.
been brought up with it. That it's just part of their kind of life.
So
I think where the stigma and the shame comes in is either about not seeking help for this or fear that people will assume you're an offender
yeah.
or assume that you're predatory.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And I
and
think some of
also,
that is
and
the
some
way
of
we
it is,
pathologize male
yeah,
sexuality still.
absolutely. And men may behave in that way anyway because cultural norms are such that it becomes encoded in that way. Certainly, I have a lot of young men coming up to me and sort of being very confused that they're quite misogynistic and then they're trying to have relationships, but they've learnt all this stuff online, the manosphere.
Yeah,
They've looked at all this quite gross pornography and
yeah.
the power differentials that it suggests. And
But
then they
what
get
that
very confused.
pornography,
Yeah,
yeah, and that pornography is teaching them that that is what women want.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
they are incredibly confused. They're watching something that is saying women like it like this, women want you to do this, women want this, this, and this. If they are like that, then that hashtag me too, if and they can get cancelled, accused of goodness knows what. But alternatively, and I see this so often as well, if they're not, and so many young men are so confused about what they're meant to do. If they're overly polite, oh, is it okay if I do this? They're so terrified of getting it wrong, they can then end up being accused of, oh, for goodness sake, what's wrong with you?
yeah, yeah,
Why are
yeah,
you being so wet? We're talking very sort of heterosexual type relationships
yeah,
here. But what's
absolutely.
wrong with you? Why aren't you? Come on. We still have an expectation that men are meant to be in charge, in control, know what they want, but not too much that you're pushing over a line. And I think for so many young men now, it's, you know what? I won't swear too much. Sod it. I'll just look at the porn. It's easier.
Yeah, no,
Trying to meet someone and get into a sexual relationship, stuff that.
and
I
then you
wouldn't know where
add
to
on,
start.
yeah, and then
Porn's easy.
you add on all the other stuff that we were talking about earlier on that people are at risk or men are at risk because the modeling they had for relationships in the real world wasn't so great anyway. They grew up with
Yes,
inappropriate
yes,
models. They haven't got the interpersonal skills. Um, all of that sort of stuff can produce, I guess, a perfect storm of
yeah,
retreating
yeah,
to this world which is causing them harm, and they don't understand that
yeah,
it's causing them harm until something happens. So
yeah.
the vast majority are men that you're treating. Just a very brief question. Are women underrepresented or is it mostly a male issue, do you think?
Mm. So the research is pretty consistent in terms of prevalence of, and the different studies come up with different figures, but it's about just under half are women. And again, pretty consistently, women are less likely to come forward
Okay.
for help. And I think some of that is to do with the stigma and shame that women are going to experience. I think also a really frustrating catch-22 that that there aren't services specifically for women. So we have tried at the Laurel Centre, we probably need to try again actually, to do specific services for women and specific groups for women, because we're a strong believer in group work, but we don't get enough women coming forward, so we stop providing the service. And if the service isn't there, they won't come forward. If they don't come
Yeah.
forward, you can't provide a service.
I mean, yeah, I
So you end
know.
up in that
But
annoying
it
catch
is also
22.
the case in my experience, having taken people to some of the peer support mechanisms around compulsive sexuality. There's a lot of guys in the room, and the stories are pretty strong stories. And I wouldn't
Yeah,
like to be a woman
yeah,
on my own in that meeting. Not that you'd be predated upon or anything, because you wouldn't be, but it
yeah.
would be pretty difficult to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would always be doing single sex,
Yeah.
single gender groups. But I think the hypothesis that I have would be, and there'll be people out there who object to me saying this, but my hypothesis would be, if you have got a compulsive sexual behavior disorder and you're female, you can make a living out of it.
Yes, I mean, absolutely, and it is monetized without a doubt. I mean,
Absolutely.
I totally get that. I think that's spot on, to be honest. The way
Yeah.
society and culture is set up, it's actually, and we've seen it on programs like Euphoria, etc. The main character that was the doggy scene, famous doggy scene,
Haven't
but
seen that.
actually there was also another story there about living with this very controlling guy who had all the finances, and actually was that a route out for her in some ways? And that's a
Yeah.
broader
Yeah.
political cultural issue. So we've jumped around a bit. That's fine. So
The big topic.
if I summarize, there's been more and more research into this area of human
Yeah.
experiencing. We are
Yeah.
understanding why it happens. Part of it is biology, but a significant part of it, like the neurodiversity stuff and inherited trauma and all that, may be biological, but
Yeah.
a significant part of it is environmental impingement. And we
Yes.
have a lot of tools around environmental impingement psychologically now to help people. And there's also the plasticity of the brain and the neurogenesis, not just neuroplasticity, but neurogenesis. So we know we can change. Can you say something? I don't want to put you on the spot. Can you say something about how you help people change? What are their what's on offer, if you like, and
Yeah,
what's your
absolutely.
experience of treatment outcomes vis-a-vis?
Yeah.
Because 12 step is great. Lots of people use it. I think it's fantastic. Lifelong support absolutely would encourage that. But as you said,
Cost of a cup of tea. Yeah.
all of that stuff, and why would you not, to be honest?
Yeah.
It's like, in terms
Yeah.
of emotional regulation, it's available several times a day if you want it. And given the
Yeah.
world we live in, it's a sensible choice, right? But in terms of you specifically clinically with this understanding now and the Laurel Centre, and I also want to talk about your charity as well, but tell me about what treatment looks like, what the outcomes, how long, how success, all that sort of stuff. 'Cause there's still
Yeah.
a hangover from the Minnesota model approach, which we mentioned, which wasn't great, to be honest. The
Yeah.
outcomes weren't great. So tell us about you and what you understand.
So at Laurel Centre, we provide individual therapy and we also do group work as well. So we
Yeah,
do there's two different models. Ideally, people will do both. What you can get from group work, the peer support, the breaking through shame, the learning from others is just something that you can't match with individual therapy.
yeah,
You're working on attachment wounds in real time. So, I
yeah.
mean, if we could, we'd get everybody into group, but it's a bit of a hard sell. Not everybody
Okay,
wants to do it. So we obviously do individual therapy as well. We also, I think it's too big to cover this as well in this podcast, but we do support for partners. We have partner support programs as
great,
well, support for
great.
couples. But in terms of the treatment approach, it is, I mean, it's twofold really, and fairly basic and obvious. One is practical strategies for behaviour change.
Yeah,
So that is talking about where's your device, how are you using your device, putting blockers on your device, having distraction techniques, having things that you can do, urge management, urge control,
Right.
grounding techniques, somatic, it's all different sort of things like that that actually help with the behavioral change. And critically, and you can't do one without the other, looking at what's going on underneath the drivers. So what is it? So basically, the function of the behavior, any compulsive sexual behavior, when it meets the criteria, because there are many, many people out there, of course, who are having wonderful, wonderful relationship with sex and porn without any issues, but assuming that it is met the level to meet the diagnosis for CSBD, the function of the behavior is not sex, which is why the the third book is called Sex is Not the Problem. The function is not the sex. The function is emotional regulation.
That's right.
Primarily, it's become a way of either suppressing negative emotions or creating positive ones. And when I say suppressing negative, for some, particularly, we know this is all backed up by neurobiology now, it's just to feel normal.
Yeah.
So we'll have started off as a pursuit of something to make me feel good and buzzy. Now I just need to do it because if I don't do it, I feel like shit.
I feel
So just to feel
jittery, I
normal, I
feel
need,
depressed
yeah,
and anxious and
exactly,
da.
exactly. I need to
Absolutely.
do this to feel normal. So it's about emotional regulation. You need to really understand where the messages have come from, what's getting in the way of you finding other ways of managing whatever it is that you are managing.
Yeah.
So working on those underlying issues, which may be to do with attachment, may be to do with trauma, maybe to do with it, however many other developmental issues, you need to critically do that piece of work as well as the pragmatic relapse prevention stuff and managing urges.
Right.
Doing one without the other just will not work.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be behavior change,
Yeah,
literally, but
yeah,
there's also got to be an improvement in the quality of life, which comes down to
yeah.
how, am I getting better relationships with people, with myself and with people? Because what would be the point otherwise?
Absolutely. There's so one of the things I do love about the 12 step sort of movement is some of the wonderful sayings that have come from there. And one of them is recovery is about what you take up, not what you give up.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Actually, that just gave me chills. That's a lovely way of saying it. That's a
Yeah.
really nice way. Really encapsulates. Thanks for that.
So how are you going to build your life? What are you going to build
Yeah.
how do you, and getting your identity back? What's your sex life going to be? Who are you as a sexual human being? How do you want to enjoy that?
And
So really
roughly,
looking
piece
at
of
what you
string
gain.
question, roughly how long do people stay with you? I mean, some may be long term, but if you would, if I was to put a gun to your head and say, tell me how many weeks, how many weeks?
If you put a gun to my head and said that, I'd say we've got some major issues
Yeah,
here,
we got
Noel,
some
that we
major
need to
problems.
work on.
Brilliant. I'd be admitting myself.
You're in the wrong place. I
Yeah.
would say, 25.
Okay. So it's a
So I
reasonable
think
amount of
that
time. Yeah.
it is a reasonable amount of time. I think one of the things that research has shown us recently is that CSBD is a spectrum disorder.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get some people at the milder end. You 6 sessions, some good blocking software, a good positive plan, some good solid CBT stuff. You might be off. Brilliant. For others, much further at the other end, where it's really become habituated in the brain, it's
Yeah.
going to take longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
If at the same time as you got all that heavy habituation in terms of behavior change, you've also gone through a recent bereavement, you lost your job, this, that, life's shit as well, basically, it's going to take longer. But
There's
there's kind
somebody
of a
weird in the White
period,
House. That's the one.
yeah, there's a period of time for kind of getting back to some kind of stability
Yeah.
and not, but then you want growth and you right back to where we started, really talking about how much therapy is about personal growth. And when you're a therapist yourself, you need to do that growth work and
Yeah.
grow away from it. And that I've had clients that I've been working with, not solidly weekly, but I've got clients that I've still seen after 8 years. It's
Yeah, I mean,
brilliant.
I'll put my hand up and say very honestly that, I've had at least 20 years of personal and group therapy because the stuff that happened to me was unpleasant. So to get to a point where you can function in the world, it's worth every second as far as I'm concerned.
But I
Um,
think also identity is something that constantly evolves. So I said earlier,
sure.
fairly recently become a grandmother, which I can't quite believe.
I thought
What
we
what
weren't supposed to talk about that,
what
Grant.
what kind of
I
grandmother?
got a bollocking from her before the show. You can't say that.
What kind of grandmother will I be? What's my
Yeah,
identity in this new role? How
yeah,
will I
great,
do this? We're
great.
getting older, we're aging. What does that mean to me? The fact that I'm losing aspects of my identity that were really important to me. I used to run. I used to be a really good runner, long distance runner. Oh, my knees,
My
no, my
knees have gone.
hips.
I don't feel
Oh,
old anywhere except for my knees.
your knees. Can't do that anymore. How do what what's my new identity in this
Okay.
older body that I
Yeah, yeah,
now
yeah.
have?
Absolutely.
So it's constant. We're never going to stop growing, hopefully. So why would we stop reaching out for
I
therapy
totally agree. I totally
if you
agree.
can afford it? Yeah,
But also, there is in that story, if you don't mind me reinterpreting it for you, you are a grandmother, and all the work that you've done, everything that you've been involved with, means that as this grandmother that you are, you don't have to repeat whatever happened to you. It's changed.
indeed. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's like at the subatomic level as well. It's like there's no unconscious transference of any of that nonsense going
Yeah,
on. You can meet your children, your grandchildren, as a whole human being
yeah.
who
Hopefully,
can.
yeah,
Well, I have no doubt you do. I'm not taking the joke from you. You can. You definitely
yeah,
can, without a doubt. And so, yeah, I mean, I see that. And then life has meaning and purpose
mm,
back because that is our core meaning and purpose, isn't it? Being with other
absolutely.
people and helping other people and
Yeah.
transmitting health and well-being. So that's a
Which
lot of,
also people get the opportunity to do within group.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that
I
that
totally,
experience of
absolutely. Yeah.
altruism as well is so powerful. Yeah,
Yeah, my initial training was in drama therapy, which was all group. And
yeah, yeah,
so that was it, like it was never one to one in initially. So all the world's a stage, etc.
yeah.
So look, that's the Laurel Centre, which has been amazing to watch grow. I have to say, I've been so blown over by the work that you've done. It's brilliant stuff, and challenging stigma. You've got the new book coming out, which remind us
Yeah.
is called
Sex is not the problem.
Right, and it's not.
It's
Okay,
not about sex. It's about whatever's going on underneath. Yeah.
exactly, which is a really refreshing thing to hear. And then you've got a new charity that's available for people. Tell
Well,
me
not
about
for
that.
profit. Yeah,
Yeah,
not for profit is Pivotal Recovery. So for years, I have wanted to be able to provide something that was free or low cost.
yeah,
So Laurel Centre is a private practice. I've got a team of 25 therapists working for me. They've got mortgages to pay. They've
yeah,
got this is their
yeah, yeah.
living. Therapy is expensive. There are a lot of people who simply cannot afford it. So for many years, I wanted to provide something else. So what Pivotal is it's a podcast based recovery program.
Great.
Basically, the introductory is completely free. You there's 8 podcasts, so you listen to the podcast, and it's going to give you a really solid foundation in recovery as well as assessment on what you might need. For many people, that's enough. That's been used by about 3,000 people now. And then we've got the 60 session course. It's 95 quid, so still very affordable,
That's very cheap.
or
Yeah,
you can pay in installments, 30 quid a month.
yeah.
So you can pay in installments if that's easier. And that's 60 sessions, and you get an accompanying workbook as well. So basically, you listen to me chattering away in your head for 20 minutes, and then you open your workbook and you personalize the content. What might my triggers be? What happened to me in my childhood?
Okay.
What might be going on here? What urge control techniques? What will I try this week? Um, the feedback. So we did a pilot study for it. It was in terms of efficacy, it was a lot better than I thought. That sounds really bad, doesn't it? But you never know. So we've done the pilot study. We're doing a pilot study with students at the moment. So I've written a pivotal for students, which is 40
Great,
sessions. The impact
great.
of leaving home, being
Right.
away from home, and there's so many young people that's a really challenging time. So we're piloting that with University of Birmingham at the moment. Yeah, we've been working with quite a number of other different not-for-profits who've been able. So we're doing some work with the Forward Trust at the moment, also with Probation Service, being
Great.
able to provide
Fantastic.
this
Yeah.
to them. And yeah, it's great, and it's affordable, anonymous, accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So we're going to finish there, really, but
Okay,
just want to, like, with the idea that the sooner you spot you've got something, the sooner you get help, the
totally.
less intrusive the treatment, the more effective it is, less likelihood of a relapse, more likelihood of a complete cure, for want of a better
Yeah.
word, etc. I presume, based upon that, on your website, one of them, there's some quick answer questions thing people can check stuff out.
Yeah. There's so on the Laurel Centre, you can all pivotal recovery. There's a am I an addict? Because that's the language that people use.
Yeah.
And that is actually the CSBD 19. It's a validated assessment tool. It's been validated with over 80,000 people in 42 different countries. So you can use that assessment tool. Laurel Centre, we now have Talk to a Therapist, which is a 65 quid, 45-minute kind of assessment session to find out
Super.
what we do, and
Yeah.
whether or not we're the right approach. Or, as I said, Pivotal Foundations is completely free, and for some people, according to the feedback, it's absolutely enough. And remember what I
Yeah,
said about this is a
absolutely.
spectrum disorder.
80%,
Early
80%,
intervention.
yeah. 80% of people who turn up for an assessment under the Mental Health Act never come back. They don't need to.
Right.
That's it. It's first contact done. They talk to that person. It's done. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree. I'm in despair of more people can't have this, because that's often is enough for people to just point them in the right direction. And if we made that early intervention
Yeah.
easier, we would save so many rods across so many backs. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so when is your new book being published?
Oh, I haven't finished writing it yet. No.
Well, you better get a move on.
I've got to have it finished by the end of the year. It's the deadline. It could be this time next year. Depends on the publisher how fast they are, but I absolutely hope it's out by September next year at the latest.
Can't
Hopefully
wait.
spring.
Can't wait. Are you going to be at the Master Series in Oxford again or not?
No, I'm not.
Sorry, broader question. Where can people next see you present? It's well worth it, folks, if you get an opportunity to see Paula talk in public. Have I put
Oh,
you on the spot?
oh,
Sorry.
you have. So next thing I'm speaking at is probably going to be in Rome, at an international conference, or there's one in Canada. So there's nothing else planned
Okay.
at the moment. I mean, we've got so much stuff on our website though,
Right.
and including videos of yours
Great.
truly and stuff. But yeah,
All right.
yeah, plenty of
So
stuff out
I'm a
there.
great fan of two things at the moment, which I think the government got right, and I like to say it when I think they do. One is the age verification on porn sites, and we've
Yeah,
seen a drop off of 70%, which is
yeah.
good, really good stuff. And the other is the movements towards managing social media for children. People have different views on it, but I fully support
Oh,
that.
we've got to have education as well. It's the only thing I say. I
Yeah.
completely agree with all of that. But what worries me is if the government think or parents think, well, I've done that bit. They can't look at it now, can they? We've banned alcohol for under 18s a long time ago, but we knew we still had to educate young people. So it can't be an alternative to education.
Agreed. And like 2015, we saw a public health move towards encouraging young people never to drink. And we've seen the number of young people starting to drink drop off by 20%.
Yeah, yeah,
It absolutely has to be that. I think my feeling is that it's about time government started pushing back on these pan-national organizations that are making billions and forcing them to take some responsibility because I think asking individual parents to do it is inappropriate.
yeah.
And
Or schools that are already
all schools,
pressurized.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. All
yeah.
right, look, Paula, super to have you on and look after your knees.
Will do.
If there's one message from this podcast, look after your knees, for goodness sake. And super. So the Laurel Centre,
Pivotalrecovery.org.
and sex is not the problem. So
Yeah.
those are things, but they'll all be on the Laurel Centre, so people gravitate towards that. And lovely to have you on, folks. I hope you found that as instructive and informative and fun as I did. I'm really grateful to have Paula on again, and I'd love to get your feedback on the issues, whether you agree or disagree. Both are really important. I think the more we have a conversation and generate civil debate around these issues, the better. Hope to see you all at the next episode of the Wellbeing Show, but bye bye for now.